The phone rings once, then again and again, each call stretching longer than the last, the sound echoing into an empty space where someone should have answered. The screen lights up in the darkness, illuminating a name that had never gone ignored before. 6 missed calls turn into 8, then 12. By the 15th attempt, something no longer feels routine. It feels wrong, because this wasn't normal. Not for her. She was known for answering immediately, sometimes before the first ring had even finished. Friends joked about it. Family relied on it. It was part of who she was. Always reachable, always present, always there. Except now she wasn't. The calls keep coming in, but there's only silence on the other end. For the first time, she doesn't pick up. What changed that night? Her name was Adiz Okonkwo, 27, a communications officer known for precision and routine. She lived alone, structured her days carefully, and treated missed calls like emergencies. Phone records confirmed it. Over 6 months, she answered or returned nearly every call within minutes. There were no gaps, no anomalies, until July 14th. At 9:12 p.m., the first call came in from her closest friend. No answer. Another call at 9:13 p.m., still nothing. By 9:32 p.m., 14 calls had gone unanswered. For Adiz, that wasn't just unusual, it was alarming. By 10:05 p.m., concern replaced assumption. Something was wrong. Investigators later traced her last confirmed activity. At 8:47 p.m., her phone connected to her home Wi-Fi. At 8:52 p.m., she placed a food order. At 9:03 p.m., her device registered movement inside the apartment. At 9:08 p.m., the screen unlocked. At 9:09 p.m., she sent a routine message to a coworker. Then at 9:12 p.m., the first missed call. Everything before that followed her pattern. Everything after did not. Between 9:12 p.m. and 9:32 p.m., 14 calls came in. None were answered, none returned. Yet her phone remained active, connected, functioning. At 9:14 p.m., the screen briefly lit up. No response followed. At 9:18 p.m., it activated again. Still no action. At 9:22 p.m., the final screen wake was recorded. After that, complete silence. The phone wasn't on silent. There was no technical issue. It was working exactly as expected, which meant the disruption wasn't technical. It was human. Attention shifted to the food delivery. The driver arrived at 9:15 p.m., called twice, and got no answer. He waited, then left. Security footage confirmed his presence, but also captured something else. At 9:16 p.m., a faint shadow moved behind Adiz's curtain. Subtle, but there. Enhanced footage suggested more than one person inside. Yet she lived alone. Her phone never left the apartment. Whatever happened occurred inside, between 9:12 p.m. and 9:22 p.m., the same window when her phone showed brief activity, but no response. The missed calls began to look less like coincidence and more like a timestamp, the exact moment something interrupted her. The breakthrough came from biometric data. At 9:14 p.m., her phone was unlocked, but not with her fingerprint. There was a failed attempt, then another, then access granted using an unrecognized print. Someone else had tried to use her phone. That detail changed everything. Adiz hadn't ignored the calls. She had been stopped from answering them. Investigators identified a former acquaintance who had recently contacted her. Phone records showed a short call between them at 8:41 p.m. Location data placed him near her apartment around 9:10 p.m. At 9:19 p.m., his phone went offline, the same minute as a final activity on hers. The sequence aligned too closely. He had arrived unannounced. An encounter followed. At 9:12 p.m., the first call came in, and at that exact moment, something escalated. Adiz likely reached for her phone, but never got the chance to respond. The brief screen activations were not normal usage. They were interruptions, attempts cut short. The missed call marked the exact second her routine was broken, not by choice, but by force. The suspect was found days later. Digital evidence placed him at the scene, and his phone data matched the timeline. He eventually confessed enough to confirm what investigators had already concluded. The incident was not long planned. It unfolded within minutes. In the narrow window between a ringing phone and a call left unanswered, Adi's body was later recovered. Her apartment showed minimal disturbance. The most important evidence had not been physical, but behavioral. The absence of an answer, the break in a pattern so consistent that its disruption became undeniable. For her family, the hardest part was simple. They had called again and again, and she hadn't answered. For investigators, the case reinforced a critical truth. In a world of constant communication, silence is rarely meaningless. Sometimes, it is the loudest signal there is. And in this case, it wasn't just a missed call, it was the moment everything stopped.